Hello, Math 7 students. This is Open Up Resources, 6th grade, Unit 2, Lesson 5. This is another 6th grade review talking about equivalent ratios. To get started, I want to ask you the question, have you ever cooked in the kitchen? Most students answer yes to this question. So my next question is, does what you make ever taste just exactly the same as Mom makes? Even though I'm a grown adult, the answer is no. I can never make things quite exactly the same way that Mom does. But part of that is all about following recipes. So here we have a recipe for tuna casserole. Read through the recipe. Make sure you understand it because I'm about to ask some questions. If you need more time to read through the recipe, then pause the video. My first question is this. How many ounces of cream of chicken soup do we need? The answer to that is 10. My next question is, there is an ingredient that we need 3 cups of. What is that ingredient? And again, we can see that's going to be our pasta. And my final question, what is the first step of this recipe? A lot of students answer and say that it's combine the pasta, tuna, soup, and half of the cheese. That might be correct, but you need to make sure you're able to read and see everything first. We are combining the pasta. Is that pasta going to be cooked so it's soft or hard and crunchy? Since the first step says combine the pasta, we can probably assume that it's hard and crunchy. Unless you did a really good job of reading the recipe and saw that it's not just 3 cups of pasta, it's 3 cups of cooked pasta. So we need to make sure we know how to read that recipe because the first step is actually to cook the pasta, even though it's not listed. Now that we've had our fun with that, let's dive into the lesson. We start with the question, what is the ratio of ounces of soup to the cups of shredded cheese to the cups of pasta in one batch of casserole? From our last lesson, we reviewed equivalent ratios and we practiced writing equivalent ratios as fractions. Now, as much as I would love to do that here, when we're comparing 3 different things, we can't write them as fractions anymore. So I'm going to color code to help me through this problem, to help me get it all set up. And what I see is it says the ratio of ounces of soup. So I'm going to look for that, ounces of soup, to the cups of shredded cheese. So cups of shredded cheese to the cups of pasta. So cups of pasta. As I'm setting up this ratio, again, we're going to have to set it up using the old-fashioned way, using those colons. So ounces of soup, we have 10 ounces of soup. 10 ounces of soup to 1 cup of shredded cheese, so to 1 cup, to 3 cups of cooked pasta, so to 3 cups. So the ratio is 10 ounces to 1 cup to 3 cups. Now we're going to transition how much of each of these 3 ingredients would be needed to make twice the amount of casserole. The next question is half the amount of casserole. Pause the video long enough to answer each of those questions. Once you've answered them on your own paper, then you can continue. I hope you were able to find relationships like this. Twice the amount, that's the number 2. That means I need to be multiplying by 2 or doubling the recipe. Why might I need to double the recipe? Well, maybe we have our cousins coming over, so we need to make extra to make sure that we have enough. When I do that, the 10 ounces needs to be multiplied by 2, and now I have 20 ounces. But I can't just double the ounces of soup. I also need to make sure that I am doubling the cups of cheese. So I'm also going to multiply this by 2. And 1 cup of cheese doubled is going to become 2 cups of that shredded cheese. And 3 cups of pasta also needs to be doubled and is now going to become 6 cups of pasta. What is it going to look like when I need to half the amount of casserole? Now again, that number here is half. What we should be doing mathematically is multiplying by 1/2. 10 times 1/2 is 5. Now there is another way that we can do this, and I want to make sure that we're paying attention to both methods. We can multiply by the fraction 1/2, but we can also divide by 2. Either way, 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 10 times 1/2 is 5 ounces. Continuing on that same process, I'm going to take this one, multiply it by 1/2, and now I have just 1/2 cup of cheese. And to finish up, 3 cups of pasta is also going to be halved, or in other words, multiplied by 1/2, and that is going to give me 1.5 cups of pasta. So with that information, what will we do when we need 5 times the amount? 5 times the amount. What about 1/5 of the amount? I want you to think about that, pause the video, and answer those questions. As I'm getting ready to answer this question, I am switching to a new color so that we don't get confused with our relationships. 5 times. That tells me that I would need to be multiplying by 5. Perhaps we have a lot of company. It's not just cousins, it's cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents, and so we need to make a lot of tuna casserole. So what should we be doing with this number? Well, the 10 would need to be now multiplied by 5. And 10 multiplied by 5 gives me that number of 50 ounces of soup. Since I'm multiplying the soup by 5, I'm also going to need to multiply the cheese by 5. Make sure I have enough cheese, so that is also going to need to be multiplied by 5. And 1 times 5 is 5 cups of cheese. And since I multiplied the others by 5, of course it makes sense that I'm also going to need to multiply the pasta by 5. I used to need 3 cups, now I'm making such a large batch that I am now going to need 15 cups of cooked pasta. So the ratio is now 50 ounces of soup to 5 cups of cheese to 15 cups of cooked pasta. And now, what is that going to look like when we need to go with 1/5 the amount of casserole? Now you're making a batch just for yourself. In order to answer that, I want to pay attention to the relationship that we observed right here. Multiplying by 1/2 ended up being the same as dividing by 2. Let's write that down, because this is not a new relationship. Multiplying by 1/2 is the same as dividing by 2. Now that's interesting. I am seeing the same number. To really make that connection, we need to understand that 2 can be written as a fraction 2 wholes. And now it's really easy to see that relationship. The 2 that was on the bottom now goes to the top, and the 1 that was on the top goes to the bottom, and this relationship is called reciprocals. We addressed this in our last unit. So let's look at what this is going to look like here with 5 times the amount. I now have 5 times the amount, and I have 1/5 the amount. Can you see that relationship? 1/5 means I am going to be multiplying by 1/5. Now that's not quite as easy to calculate in our heads, so what is the other relationship? 1/5 and 5. Again, 5, just like 2, can be written as a fraction. That would be 5 wholes. And again, now that I've done that, we can see that relationship of these reciprocals. And so we can say multiply by 1/5 or divide by 5. Let's complete those calculations. 10 ounces divided by 5 or multiplied by 1/5 is equal to 2 ounces. 2 ounces of soup. And we're going to repeat that. 1 cup divided by 5 or multiplied by 1/5 is equal to 1/5 a cup of cheese. And to finish off this ratio, we're also going to take that 3 and do the same thing. We will divide by 5 or multiply by 1/5. No matter the calculation, the result will be the same, and I get 3/5 a cup of pasta. With the final ratio for 1/5 the amount of casserole, 2 ounces of soup to 1/5 cup of cheese to 3/5 cup of pasta. Now, I know that might seem like a short video, and it's because it is, but that's as far as we made it in class with the students. We had a crazy day where we accomplished a lot of other things, and so that's it for today's lesson. We'll continue the rest of the lesson in another video. Go ahead and give yourself the challenge and see if you can complete these next problems in advance of that video, because we will start the next video diving right into these problems. That's it for today. We'll see you next time.